Hi, this is Deborah Tavares on the PureMomentumNetwork, and we are here today with a special guest, Ron Angell. We've had Ron on previously, and we're going to be covering some matters of great importance. But before we jump into that, you can contact our website, stopthecrime.net, and any documents that you are going to be hearing us discuss today will be free downloads for you from our website, stopthecrime.net. And you can also watch the Pure Momentum First Hour non-subscribers portion of this program as well. And we will be, of course, eager for people to subscribe, and we'll discuss that at the end of this first hour's program. But it's extremely important to understand the basis of which everything that you're going to hear us discussing literally started from. And it started from the fact that we are now under a corporate structure. We are not under the United States Constitution as the corporate structure and the bankers that are posing as a legitimate government would like you to believe. Rather, we're under corporate statutes, not laws, through the Constitution. That is why our laws are coming through the executive branch via executive order. It's extremely important to get this positioning of our reality first, because everything builds from that. And if we had a representative government, we would not be having the conversation that you're going to hear in this broadcast today. So I would urge everybody to go to stopthecrime.net, click on the USA Inc. link, and take a look at Senate Report 93549. It identifies all of us, all Americans, as the enemy of the corporate government structure. We are the enemy. And this is why we're having to fend against GMO being added to our food supply, all of the poisons and toxins being added to the water supply, the fluorides, etc. Why we're having being chemtrailed overhead with toxic dumps that are changing the pH in the soil, killing the plants, the birds, the bees, and far worse, dumping nanofibers on and into everything, every living thing. So why is Senate Report 93549 calling us the enemy? Well, back in 1933 and every year since, each president has annually extended the national state of emergency. And as long as the United States is in a national state of emergency, which is declared every single year, what we have is we have a leadership that has dictatorial control. And they have been given authorization and have promoted the advancement of corporate government agencies within our system, the EPA, the USDA, Homeland Security, Fish and Game, Air Quality Management, FCC. These are all corporate agencies. And when you look them up on Dun and Bradstreet, D-U-N and Bradstreet, you will see them listed as corporations doing business. Many people get confused about what corporations are. They think that they are just a corporate advantage of reducing income tax and benefiting the decreased liability. But it's very interesting because we just posted on stopthecrime.net under the USA Inc. link what the Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens said in 2010, and this is extremely important. This is USA Inc. and Earth Inc., and corporate predatory government agencies have deceived the global politicians. Now, this following is a quote from Judge Stevens. Corporations have no conscience, no beliefs, no feelings, no thoughts, no desires. Corporations help structure and facilitate the activities of human beings, to be sure, and their personhood often serves as a useful legal fiction, but they are not themselves members of we the people, by whom and for our Constitution was established. Now, of course, personhood is the status of being human, being a person with feelings and emotions. And a legal fiction is what has occurred in our judiciary system. It's a rule assuming something is true when it's clearly false. So we are being set up as legal fictions when we are live human beings within a predatory corporate structure that does not have any thoughts, feelings, beliefs, or conscience. It's void of morality, of ethics, and does not have any concern for life. So this is absolutely critical that people understand this basic foundation of which, sadly, our country has been deceptively consumed by. And only by knowing will we be able to change anything. And if we continue to say nothing, do nothing, and refuse to learn our reality, we will have the consequences to bear. And we are having consequences to bear more and more every single day. And that's what this program is going to be about today. Because we're going to be talking about the advancement of technologies and how they are being used to the detriment of all mankind and all living things on the face of the planet. So to that end, I would like to introduce Ron Angell. Has become a friend of mine, has a near photographic memory, vast years of knowledge and information, and we're working on getting this information out. It's all documents, and it's all documented resource material that is available to you. As you listen to this program, you can look at some of the documents we will be speaking about today. And one document in particular that you can type into your search engine is entitled U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights, 2006, Sonoma State University. I'm going to repeat that. U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights, December 2006, Sonoma State University. Now, Ron, we have been talking about this document off air. It's extremely disturbing, but it is very important for people that are listening to take a look at this document. It's interesting that we're talking about this particular document, of which there are many on StopTheCrime.net under the Source Document tab, because Sonoma State University is in Northern California. It's only about a half an hour from where I am personally located, and it's only about 45 minutes from Bohemian Grove, and there's a stellar tie between the university and Bohemian Grove. So with that, Ron, I would like to welcome you to the program, and certainly would like to have you start discussing this document. And more importantly, I think what we discussed, too, how under the guise of convenience, we have been fooled and tricked. So why don't you explain what you mean by that? Thank you, Ron, for joining us.
Well, you're very welcome. And I would really like to thank the three individuals that put this wonderful document together, because the three individuals, Peter Phillips, Lou Brown, and Bridget Thornton, were studying these effects on the control of the human person. And it says here, as a study of the history of the U.S. intelligence community, human rights violation, and continuing research in electromagnetic weapons, they completed this paper from Sonoma State University, U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights, December 2006, as part of the Project Censored and the Media Freedom Foundation. So this document is a disclosure of these technologies, and it's a 48-page PDF document everyone should have on hand. I've had it in my possession since 2007. And the table of contents read as follows. Page 3, the research statement. Page 5, American ruling class. Page 6, neoconservatism. Page 9, global dominance. Page 10, psychological war. 13, Tesla and EMF. Page 17, MKUltra. And then we'll get into it from there. And we're going to look at specifically page 3 of this document, U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights, by Peter Phillips, Lou Brown, and Bridget Thorpe. The research explores the current capabilities of the U.S. military to use electromagnetic EMF devices to harass, intimidate, and kill individuals, and the continuing possibilities of violations of human rights by the testing and deployment of these weapons. To establish historical precedent in the U.S. for such acts, we document long-term human rights and freedom of thought violations by a U.S. military intelligence organization and, in quotes, COINTELPRO counterintelligence. Additionally, we explore contemporary evidence of ongoing government research in electromotive force weapons, EMF weapons, technologies, and examine the potentialities of continuing human rights abuses. In the 1950s,
Ron, there may be some of the listeners that are not familiar with what COINTELPRO means. So if you could just quickly insert a definition there.
Sure. Well, we can go to page 9, but I can tell you COINTELPRO, page 9 of this document gets into that. COINTELPRO would be the fake CIA or the fake FBI or the fake government agency that's sent out to cover up the crimes that have been committed. So on page 9 of this document...
Okay, well, then we can get into further detail. I appreciate that because I think that does, for the moment, explain that this is COINTELPRO and, as you just said, fake CIA, FBI to cover up these acts.
Yeah, the FBI, remember, before 2000, did not answer to the president. They were the ones to investigate Watergate. The first thing George Bush Jr. did in 2000 was create a system where the FBI had to answer to the president. That never existed before. It was the first time in history. And then look at the problems that we faced. So we had an actual attack of our government agencies in and around 2004.
Well, of course, yeah, of course, actually, ever since 1933, however, when and prior to that, when the U.S. was incorporated, our currency was stolen. We were brought under the Federal Reserve, which is an offshore corporate banking cartel. We've been slowly and incrementally pushed into a illusion of what democracy, freedom, and rule of law is. But I didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation because I think page 3 is extremely important, and I know you were
let me finish. Yeah, now let me go into. Okay, let me finish after the continuing human rights abuses of the EMF technologies. Okay, then on page 3 it reads, in the 1950s and the 1960s, the CIA began work to find means for influencing human cognition, emotion, and behavior through the use of psychological understanding of the human being as a social animal and the ability to manipulate a subject's environment through isolation, drugs, hypnosis, and we can say chemtrails, genetically modified food, vaccines. I'm adding all these here. Nanoparticles and nanotubulars in the vaccines. Okay, U.S.-funded scientists have long searched for better means of controlling human behavior. This research has included the use of wireless directed electromagnetic energy under the heading of information warfare and non-lethal weapons. Now, we know from our previous shows that these are very lethal weapons.
Absolutely. In fact, I just wanted to insert right here because you brought up an extremely important point when you said non-lethal weapons, because we have been certainly talking about doublespeak. And there's an interesting book by William Luton, Lutz, L-U-T-Z, titled Doublespeak.
Yes.
Yes, and he talks about how the words have been misused and changed. And you can think of it like this. Non-lethal, of course, as you just said, Ron, is anything but non-lethal. It's deadly. And they talk about how some bullets are called U.S. safety slugs. So they're using words to mute down reality and to shift us into the sense of safety when it is absolutely deadly. So I just wanted to insert that, Ron. Please continue. You were, I think, at new technology capabilities.
New technological capabilities have been developed in black budget projects over the last few decades, including the ability to influence human emotion, disrupt thought, and present excruciating pain through the manipulation of magnetic fields and my, quote, NMRI technology. The U.S. military and intelligence agencies, COINTELPRO, have at their disposal frightful new weapons that have likely already been covertly used and or tested on humans, both here and abroad, and which could be directed against the public in the event of mass protests or civil disturbances.
Well, of course, now hang on, because this was written back in 2006. In fact, it was completed December of 2006. And when they used the word which could be directed against the public in the event of mass protests or civil disturbances, we know that it has already been done. So they talk about it.
It was done October 17th, 2006 by George Bush Jr. Mm-hmm. And it says in the next paragraph on page 3, exactly this: human rights belong to the people collectively. To believe in rights for some and not others is a denial of the humanness of the people worldwide. Yet denial is exactly what Congress and George W. Bush did with the signing of the Military Commissions Act of 2006. And that was a very well-hidden, covered-up thing. It was the Military Commissions Act of 2006, October 17th. The new official U.S. policy is that torture and suspension of due process are acceptable for anyone the president deems to be a terrorist or supporter. This act is the overt denial of the inalienable rights of human beings propagated in our Declaration of Independence and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I'll add this, in Article 1 of the 1975 Declaration Against Torture that was signed after the Geneva Conventions in 1948, signed then again by President Ford soon after the Vietnam War in 1975, and signed one more time by President Reagan just before he was shot.
And of course, all of that was well-intended, but as we now know, it was an illusion to keep these kinds of technologies hidden, even though they were becoming widely used, and now it has expanded to the use of all living creatures on the planet. So we continue, and I guess conclude that with more so, U.S. actions declared to the world that the U.S. suspends human rights for those it believes are evil.
And we're going to say here, it says also on page 3, the precious words, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, all men and women, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? Now let's go into, farther down into this document, back into, additionally, this is on page 4. Additionally, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declares that everyone has the right to freedom of thought and freedom of expression and opinion. This means that humans have the inalienable right to be able to freely think their own thoughts and discover their own truths. This paper, done by Sonoma State University, addresses the most fundamental human right and explores the pending threats to individual freedom of thought posed by the new EMF weapons technologies. Freedom of thought or cognitive liberty is the natural human right of each person to be secure in their ability to perceive the world to the best of their ability. And then we're going to go down a little farther into
well, what
weapons.
I find very interesting, and of course it's obvious that Peter Phillips and Lou Brown and Bridget Thornton, or I should say it's likely that they were unaware of what occurred in 1933, because the illusion of freedom and liberty, etc., is simply an illusion. In fact, there's a recent book out called Tragedy and Hope 101, and I would recommend everyone take a look at this. It is talking about the illusion of democracy, of freedom, and of personal rights. And when you look at source documents on StopTheCrime.net, particularly the Iron Mountain report that came out in the 60s, and you read the intention of controlling all people to the extent of utilizing numbers to of genocidal reduction of mass population on an annual basis, and other deployments to as they.
And I would like to say that George Bush Sr. ushered in the New World Order in his 1991 speech in the White House. Everyone's familiar when he gives his speech about the New World Order.
And he did. That's absolutely true.
So we may wish to insert that YouTube video in some of the notes of this so we can see that Agenda 21 was not turned on the U.S. until 1991. In and around the time of the Rodney King beating, which followed during the Bush Senior administration, was martial law in Watts in L.A., Madison, Wisconsin, and other universities and centers of civil liberties, truth, and justice. They began to run these genocidal hidden operations whereby they could cut off phone communication. At that time, we didn't have cell phones to the degree we did, and then newspapers and radio. Mm-hmm. Now they can cut off phone, internet, radio, all forms of media outlets, and getting the word out. That's why, with the Military Commissions Act of 2006 that George Bush Jr. ushered in, it was tacked on the bottom of a bill, and most of the Senate and congressmen were too busy to read the whole bill. They just signed it, not realizing
you
what they had done.
You have to remember now we've been under a consistent state annually of a national state of emergency. And so when we repeatedly hear Congress and the Senate say, well, we haven't read the bill, but we've signed it, it's because it's basically a soap opera that we see them there in the first place. It's to keep the illusion of a representative government with the branches that we've been taught in our indoctrination schools. And it's all part of the mind control to keep us in control while they bring about these massive amounts of technologies that they have kept hidden and kept secret. And I think it's interesting because on page 4, and I know you were getting to that paragraph where it talks about the circumstance may soon arrive in which anti-war or human rights protesters suddenly feel a burning sensation akin to touching a hot skillet over their entire body. Simultaneously, they may hear terrifying, nauseating screaming, which, while not produced externally, fills their brains with overwhelming disruption. Not only are both phenomena currently possible, but designs for more powerful EMF technologies receive continuous funding from the U.S. government, Incorporated. Incorporated is my addition, because that is what we have.
Put in quotes, Russian government. The death ray, the Russian death ray has been around, and there was a 60 Minutes disclosure on this in the 70s. Okay, and I have a YouTube video I'll share with you on the fact that these technologies were in Russian control first.
Well, what is interesting, Ron, and I know that we've discussed this previously, but and anyone that's listening can go to the Internet, and you can type in Medford, Oregon, MEDFORD, Medford, Oregon, 1970. And you can bring up and type in unexplained suicides. What occurred was in about a 48-hour period of time, there were a dozen suicides in Medford, Oregon. And when experts went to investigate what had happened, they looked at the water, the food, the soil, etc., and then they discovered that it was frequencies. And there was a nearby military facility, a U.S. facility, and they denied having anything to do with it. Well, it was later confirmed that the Russians had indeed been beaming frequencies onto the house wires through the antenna and the TV antennas of these houses, and literally able to influence the brains of these people to commit suicide. So I know that you've talked about the different types of frequencies, Ron, that affect and create different types of moods.
Yeah, if you and I will share this with you. If you internet search General Myers Rumsfeld microwave weapons, or internet search high-powered microwave weapons, or internet search the people cooker, they refer to this as the people cooker, just as Barry Trowers disclosed. There was an unsolved mystery.
Did you say search high-powered energy weapons?
High-powered microwave weapons?
Oh, microwave. Okay.
Okay, or search microwave weapons people cooker. Don't use Google, because Google's been taken over by NASA and the Department of Defense since 2003. Use a little search engine called IXQuick, www.ixquick.com, IXQUICK.com. Never use Google. Google, the NSA, NASA, Disney, and the Department of Defense are all one and the same. So you're giving them your GPS location when you do a search in Google, training them to actually assault you for coming across certain information that they don't want people to know. Now these things are coming into the mainstream media with Jesse Ventura speaking of this. We're seeing Snowden and his recent disclosure on NBC News saying the NSA can read our thoughts, or almost read our thoughts. We know they can read our thoughts. Okay, from a New York Times publication in 1984 saying that the Pentagon is able to use their ESP weapon during times of war, although in 1984 it was a complete time of peace. This technology has been around at least since 1984, where they can brain image. In one of our previous shows where we were talking about brain imaging and supercomputers and how this is done. And I would like to read something from page 7 of this document.
Now I just want to remind everybody that's listening how they can get to this document. Certainly you will be able to go to stopthecrime.net to the resource document tab, but you can also type in your search engine, U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights, 2006, Sonoma State University, and Sonoma is S-O-N-O-M-A, Sonoma State University, and that is in California. And you are on page 6, did you say, Ron?
Page 7.
Page 7.
I'm going to read this. The neoconservative philosophy emerged as a reaction to the 1960s era of social revolutions. Numerous officials and associates in the Reagan and George Bush senior presidencies were strongly influenced by the neoconservative philosophy, including John Ashcroft, Charles Fairbank, Richard Cheney, Kenneth Edelman, Elliott Abrams, William Crystal, and Douglas Feith. With the Ford administration, there was a split between the Cold War traditionalists seeking to minimize confrontations through diplomacy and detonate neoconservatives advocating stronger confrontations with the Soviets' evil empire. The latter group became more entrenched when George H. Bush became CIA director in 1978 during the Carter administration. I added that. Just before, by the way, the hostages in Iran and the 2 Chinook helicopters with the 50 U.S. Special Force Marines that Carter sent in that were shot down in falsity in order to cause the hostages to be held past the election in order to cause Reagan to win the election and appoint George H. Bush vice president, showing within the Carter administration, Carter had traitors on his administration, namely a George H. Bush, who he appointed CIA director.
So this is fascinating because this document and what you are adding to it, Ron, really does help explain to those listeners. And this is a document that really needs to be shared. Everyone needs to download this document. If you are not able to download any of the documents that you hear us speak about today, very, very important that you contact a print shop that we have set up that will, for the cost of postage and shipping, send you whatever document you would like. And you can do that by calling area code 707-586-9558. Once again, area code 707-586-9558. I would also recommend that you download and read The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America, and also The Matrix and the U.S. Constitution. Both of these papers were written by retired Judge Dale. This is extremely important to understand your history that you have been robbed of and you have been educated out of knowing. And it's very disturbing, The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America by Judge Dale, which you can find on the homepage of StopTheCrime.net, is a very disturbing read in the sense that reality is exposed. And suddenly you realize what the movie The Matrix really is and was all about. And you realize that you've been deceived. And you have been literally placed in a box, an illusion.
Crippling your programming each and every day. We are the Pure Momentum Network.
Greetings, fellow organic beings on planet Earth. My name is Pamela Tartar. I host Critical Mass on Pure Momentum Network. My awareness tells me humanity is reaching a tipping point. A choice must be made. Either we choose continuing under ever-worsening tyranny, or we stand up in our humanity and create a new world of love, abundance, compassion, empathy, and all the human attributes and features. I invite you to join me as we explore who we are and find tools inside us, enabling us to stand tall and strong against the opposition. Now is the time. Pamela Tartar, Critical Mass.
You are listening to the Pure Momentum Network.
Welcome back, everyone, from the break. Thank you for joining us. We are now covering page 9 of the document. Again, that document is entitled U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights. It is a disclosure. You can type it into your search engine and identify it. It was Sonoma State University in 2006. Again, U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights. Now, prior to the break, we were going through some of the pages, and we're now going to talk about page 9. So, Ron, I'm going to let you start covering some of the concerns within page 9.
Yeah, well, it has to do with a group called the COINTEL Pro, COINTELPRO program. Those would be, at one time it was only about 4% of the FBI and the CIA. And I think after George Bush Sr. and then Jr., it's the majority. It's been inverted. And I'm going to read here on page 9, previous human rights and cognitive liberty violations are evidenced in CIA and FBI records pertaining to the infamous MKUltra project and the grim record of harassment and subversion uncovered in the COINTEL Pro program in force to the 1950s and into the 1970s. And I'm going to insert here from the Church Federal Committee hearings in 1975. Okay. We also examined some of these cases of illegal experimentation on the public dating back to the 1930s. We consider in depth the forms of electromagnetic weapons entering the battlefield today and trace their origins back through secret projects of the Defense Department in the 1950s and 60s. And let me insert here, if anyone's ever seen photos of spontaneous combustion, I saw those first in my middle school in Michigan in 1970 by my history teacher. We didn't spend much time on it. We just did not understand why these were taking place. But they had the Russian death ray and Tesla's death ray back in the 50s and 60s. At that time, it would have been aimed out a window in New York City, and people would have been high-powered microwave burned.
Well, you know, Ron, what's really interesting and important for everyone that's listening to know that Jesse Ventura covered a segment on the death ray with Fred Bell. And while Fred Bell was in Minnesota working on that project with Jesse, he ended up dying in the hotel. And he was one that was involved in the technology of the death ray.
So a lot of that was developed by Tesla on Long Island, on Montauk, on the Montauk project, okay? And evidence cites that a lot of the suicides and the Depression itself was created, the Depression of 1929 was created by these technologies being used and deployed on the most important financial hub, New York, in the world, New York City in New York State.
Would this align with many of the suicides we're currently seeing now in 2013 and 2014 with the bankers?
Well, yes. I would also like to say that some of those suicides are false deaths and new identity creation, because they don't want those people to testify. Okay, so you need to
explain that to people, because I know we have spoken about that. So what you're saying is that many of the suicides are false deaths, and people are being recreated with new identities, relocated, and disappeared.
Almost like let's talk about Kenneth Lay from Enron. Remember Enron in Texas, and the fact that they were cutting off the power in California, and they're, to make sure you guys didn't do your alternative energy. In the Clinton era, you guys had that great zero emissions law put in place where you guys were going to have all electric vehicles. You had the EV1 coming out, the General Motors electric battery car. You had hybrids. You had car conversions from gas to electricity. California was moving and shaking with its photovoltaics, its solar, its passive solar, its wind. You know, you can see the wind fields in the mountains coming from Lawrence Livermore and San Francisco and Oakland. Now, the first thing Bush did was repeal the zero emissions law after he became president. Enron and Kenneth Lay was guilty of massive crimes. He got busted for these crimes. He was to go to jail and pay $7 million, but was in a chalet in Colorado, and strangely dies suddenly of a heart attack at his young age. He wasn't that old, and he was cremated a day after, the next day. That's just not something Catholics do, okay? Chances are he was Bush's friend. They didn't want him in jail, sitting in jail, and to talk about all the other connections, okay? And remember, Enron brought Anderson Consulting down in St. Charles, Illinois, because they were the financial consulting firm that wasn't doing the books properly for Enron. And it was, these are the false death creations. And I think some of these bakers you're going to see suicides as either they're being shot and killed intentionally so they can't disclose information higher up the chain, or they're getting a new identity. And
well, why would it? Yeah, why? Just as a question, because we know we have Karen Hudis, one of the former attorneys for the World Bank, as a whistleblower now. Why would they kill some and let some survive? In your opinion?
Because she's exposed herself and she's already jumped over the hurdle that she is a human being and she is talking about the crimes and exposing the crimes. Whereas the others don't want that exposure; they want it minimized. Okay, and that's just a theory. Okay, but it's more than plausible. It's almost like you have the right to survive and disclose to live what you've seen in order to spread and share the info so it's disseminated globally so everyone knows. It's almost like the SALT II treaty where nuclear missile disarmament was to take place during Khrushchev and the Carter, or was it Brezhnev? No, Khrushchev. They signed the SALT II treaty, and they were to reduce all nuclear disarmaments, right? Well, the first thing Reagan does is take the SALT II treaty and 1 and 2 treaty and crumple it up. And that was done to build up HAARP, because the Russians had their Russian woodpecker in the Ukraine. The Russian woodpecker was a vertical HAARP. In fact, its power source was Chernobyl that melted down. And strangely enough, Chernobyl...
Lorin Murray actually talks about Chernobyl and HAARP.
That's the woodpecker, and the Russian woodpecker still exists as a remnant to the Cold War era, and that was basically a vertical HAARP, Garcona, Alaska system.
Well, I know that we're getting towards the final segment of our first hour here. And I know that we want to bring in a couple of things. We certainly want to talk about the media on page 9 of the U.S. Electromagnetic Weapons and Human Rights. Yeah. And I'll just quickly go into that. And then I know that we also want to play that 9-minute clip of Lorin Murray talking about MKUltra and what occurred. So on page 9 of that document, it's extremely important to understand. I know many of you listening do, but the media is complicit in omitting information necessary to make democratic decisions. A global dominance agenda includes penetration into the boardrooms of the corporate media in the U.S. a research team at Sonoma State University recently, now you have to keep in mind, this was back in 2006, finished conducting a network analysis of the boards of directors of 10 big mega organizations in the U.S. The team determined that only 118 people comprise the membership on the boards of directors of the 10 biggest mega giant media corporate organizations. Though these 118 individuals in turn sit on the corporate boards of 288 national and international corporations. 4 of the top 10 media organizations and corporations in the U.S. have Department of Defense contractors on their boards of directors, including William Kennard, New York Times, the Carlyle Group, Douglas Warner III, GE, NBC, Bechtel, John Bryson, Disney, ABC, Boeing, Alwyn Lewis, Disney, ABC, Halliburton, and Douglas McCortendale, Garnet, Lockheed Martin. And goes on to say, given an interlocked media network, big media in the U.S. effectively represent corporate America's interests. The media elite, a key component of policy elites in the U.S., are the watchdogs of acceptable ideological messages, the controllers of news and information content, and the decision makers regarding media references. And they go on page 10. There's many very important documented disclaimers or disclosures in this document that I would recommend people go through and read for themselves. Again, we'll have it posted on stopthecrime.net. But we do want to insert this extremely important 8-minute YouTube clip from Loren Murray. So we will do that now, and then we'll have a brief discussion about that before we get into the second hour.
We should also state that Loren Murray is a former federal U.S. government employee from Lawrence Livermore Laboratories.
I'm just showing you Stillwell Hall, how big and run down it is. And I want to introduce you to Loren Murray. And Loren, you are saying that some MKUltra projects took place here at Stillwell Hall.
That's correct.
What happened?
And other buildings at the Presidio. We're at the Presidio in San Francisco, which is the ancient Spanish fort, which was taken over in about 1850, around the time of the gold rush in California, by the U.S. Army. The largest standing collection of U.S. Army buildings, civil era buildings in the United States is here on Angell Island, just across the bay a little ways. And then in the 1960s and 70s, even 1950s, the CIA ran a very secret joint program called MKUltra with the British. The British part of it was called the Tavistock. And they developed through human experimentation, which was completely illegal. They kidnapped, they coerced children and adults. They used U.S. military personnel as guinea pigs in this secret mind control project. And the 3 headquarters for that CIA project were UC Berkeley, the Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab, and Stanford University. It was conducted in secret to establish mind control technologies that the U.S. military and other agencies could use to control citizens. And actually, it was part of the new Manhattan Project during the Cold War, which is called HAARP, the High Auroral Atmospheric Research Project. And in order to do the mind control on humans, they had to do animal studies first. The monkey colony at UC Davis in the 60s, where I was an undergraduate, is where they actually did the animal studies to develop mind control. It was adapted to human application at the Applied Science Facility at UC Davis, and I have a photo of Nelson Rockefeller with Edward Teller at the dedication ceremony and when that facility opened. And from that facility and the animal studies on the monkey colony, they took the technology to Livermore, where they had a safe house. It was in an old farmhouse out in the country. And there was a huge antenna field, which was run by the CIA and the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. And that was the prototype antenna for HARP, and the mind control technology is transmitted over that large antenna. The U.S. has their largest antenna at Gakona, Alaska. The Soviets were co-partners secretly during the Cold War. They're a pretend enemy. They're not our real enemy. And the 7th largest transmitters in the world are in the Soviet Union. Chernobyl was one of them. And this MKUltra mind control is in all of the cable television facilities and their network. It's in the telephones, it's in the police antennas, it's all over the United States. What they've done is to weaponize all of the grids, the standard grids that make our lives comfortable, the telephones, the electricity, the television, the police antennas, and the newest weapon to use against citizens, of course, is the cell phone antenna network, which is the most complete antenna network in the United States. They also use Gwen towers, which transmit very, very long wavelength electromagnetic frequencies, and they can even communicate with submarines across the oceans with these Gwen towers. So it's very integrated into our daily lives. It's very operational. And as Brzezinski said many years ago in the 70s, we'll just start turning it up and people won't even notice.
Now, what type of experiments went on in the building behind you?
Well, they would kidnap children and adults. They would put them in cages like they did with the monkeys in the monkey colony.
Oh,
they gave them drugs. They put wires into their brains, which were actually antennas. They experimented in very cruel and inhumane ways. They erased their memories. They manipulated them and programmed them to be really basically robot assassins with triggers that if the handler would mention a word or a phrase, it would trigger something in these subjects to carry out assassinations or to release messages they were carrying in their brains from another area.
Yeah.
They were messengers also with very top secret information. And of course, they knew nothing about what they were doing. They were completely unconscious of it. And when the mission was carried out, they forgot about it. They didn't even know about it. And here they'd been the messenger or the assassin or whatever. So the San Francisco Bay Area was a major MKUltra center. The Navy was very involved in it also. And of course today, the whole HARP facility, the new Manhattan project, is a space-based, land-based, air-based, water-based integrated electromagnetic, very, very, very powerful system, which can not only do global mind control, but it can also be used to trigger earthquakes on the ground. We can see clouds out there that look like they're chemtrail clouds. They're coming in from the ocean. And the military and NASA are spraying chemtrails across America now. The military, Air Force, and NASA are spraying chemtrails across America now as a background for their experiments with HAARP, so that they can look down from satellites and study the experiments and the effects of the experiments with an even background, which is the cloud cover on the surface of the Earth. And these chemtrails also have metal particulates. They have chemicals in them. They have human blood cells have been found in them. There are viruses and bacteria. There are radioactive nuclides in them. And these are being sprayed not just in the United States, but all NATO countries, and even countries beyond, like South America and Central America. And what they're actually carrying out is a global depopulation agenda. So the toxins in the chemtrails are killing off the weak, particularly the elderly or people who have suffered from diseases and do not have a strong immune system, and also the very young. And the greatest target of all today is our children.
Now, we've just listened to Loren Murray speak about MKUltra and many things. So, Ron, why don't you go into some of what the people just heard and maybe give some definition and description about what they heard?
Well, Loren Murray's heroic disclosure of the fact that the signal has been turned up on people without their being aware is very, very, very important for today, because what we have are incredible amounts of EMF radiation that's coming from cell towers, Wi-Fi hotspots, satellite dish networks and satellites, Trojan horse appliances within our home, i.e. Plasma TVs, computers, infrared, remote control devices on TVs, VCRs, and what we're experiencing is smart meters that are allowing superimposed signals to transfer over electrical household wiring and the power grid, as well as frequencies in mercury vapor lamps and sodium lamps and street lamps that have also been equipped with Wi-Fi, providing wireless internet hotspots and that are actually harassing, monitoring, and controlling human beings, animals, insects, birds, reptiles, and aquatic creatures, as we know from the Dr. Robert Duncan disclosure, Soul Catcher, and the fact that a dolphin and whale could be controlled over 38 years ago with the joystick. These frequencies are indistinguishable from what one normally hears. People are not aware that their thoughts, decisions are being influenced, and this is called radiohypnotic intracerebral control, an old Russian-discovered system that they are able to use radio frequencies to influence people, i.e., put them in hypnotic state, agitated state, sleep-deprived state, angry state, fear state, romantic state, and sleep state. So with a ray, they can actually generate, and one more, a hypnotic state. That's the one that was used on Europe prior to World War II to brainwash the people in order to perform acts of human rights violation beyond imagination during the rise of Adolf Hitler to power and the fascists and Nazis. Tesla coils were in Eastern Europe, in Russia, playing chess with human beings, Europe being the petri dish for this experiment. The Americans were led into World War II as a planned attack and genocidal Agenda 21 operation to depopulate the inner cities of America, weaken the industrial base and cognitive abilities of the United States of America by drawing it in to a war that was pre-planned by the globalists.
Well, Ron, I
as
think
early as 1917.
Yes, this is really extremely important information in connecting the dots for everyone that is listening. Of course, all wars are bankers' wars. Really also recommend you read the report from Iron Mountain. It's a free download from stopthecrime.net. We're going to be picking this up now in the second hour and getting into more detail of this fascinating disclosure with Ron Angell. So I would encourage everyone to become a member, a subscriber on the PureMomentum.net site, PureMomentum.net site. Subscribe, tell all of your friends, get this information spread far and wide. And you can certainly come to our website, stopthecrime.net, where we have many, many resource documents for all of you to read, understand your reality, and share this information as quickly and as rapidly as possible. So again, this is Deborah Tavares with Stop the Crime of stopthecrime.net, the website, with Ron Angell, our guest today, and we'll look forward to picking this up in the members subscribed portion following this break. Thank you very much.
We invite all our listeners to join us in the members section for the second hour of all our shows. We encourage you to click on the subscribe button, choose a membership type, pay with PayPal, and voila, you're a member. Enjoy all Pure Momentum Network material, the second hour of all talk shows, extra interviews,